Welcome to King Avenue. Thank you for coming tonight. If you are from King Avenue, if you are from one of our fellow United Methodist congregations, if you are from a reconciling congregation, or if you are from a congregation that is not yet reconciling, we are delighted to have you. I'm Colleen Ogle. I'm Associate Minister here. On behalf of Reverend John Keeney, our Senior Minister, I thank you for coming and taking time to listen to our speaker tonight talk about an important conversation that is critically important in the United Methodist Church right now. This is our second of what we hope will be a long series of Changing the Conversation talks. First, we had Rachel Held Evans last year, and this year, I'll introduce to you in a minute John Shore. Just want to say a word about the evening. You have a card in your bulletin. That card is an opportunity for you to help us know something about you and your background, and also to give us ideas for future Changing the Conversation speakers and topics. At the end of John's talk, the ushers will come and pass the plate, and the only thing that we're asking you to put in that plate is that card, okay? And that will be our point of transition to also give you an opportunity, if there's time left in the hour, to think of a question that you may want to raise. So, and then I'll have Reverend John Keeney close us with a benediction, and you are then invited to fellowship time and cookies and refreshments in the parlor. You are also invited to a book signing of John Shore's book, Unfair Christians and the LGBTQ Question. And then you also have an opportunity to browse some of the resource tables from the groups that are listed in your bulletin. I first learned about John Shore because I found online a reference to a book of his called Penguins, Pain, and the Whole Shebang, Why I Do the Things I Do by God, as told to John Shore. It was a delightful book. It was a theologically interesting and significant book, but it used absolutely no theological language. And I was really hooked on what I thought was someone who was kind of like a conversational C.S. Lewis. Who was this guy, I wondered? Well, I read the book, and then I didn't give it much more thought, until later I wanted to do a sermon for my congregation, helping them to understand the importance and the case for inclusion. And then I came upon him again and found his significant work that was done through his blog and through his writing on the Huffington Post. And I want to just give you a little bit of a sense of his background. He's the co-founder of the Not All Like That Christians Project, NALT, N-A-L-T. He's founder of Unfundamentalist Christians and author of our book that we have signed today, and many others. When John began using the platform of his blog, and later became a featured religion writer on the Huffington Post, which he used to advocate for the full acceptance and equality of LGBT Christians. There were very few Christians like him, lay people with a voice, using it vociferously and constantly as an advocate for the cause of LGBT equality. After 45 years now in which the United Methodist Church has been on one degree or another contending about this issue, in my opinion, there have been far too many conversations that have involved a lot of lay people. And so I was delighted to find someone who speaks theologically without using fancy theological terms and makes arguments that I find get away from the individual trees in the biblical witness to show the beauty of the forest and illuminate some significant truth for us. He's done a lot of work for which he has not been widely compensated. This is a blog, after all. And we all owe him, all of us who are enjoying some measure of Christian acceptance and equality, and for LGBT people and the beautiful community that creates. We owe him a debt of gratitude. And so I'd like for you to give him a warm welcome as he comes to speak to us today.
Thanks. Can I go? Yeah, all right. Thank you, Colleen. So Colleen said that y'all are going to pass around a plate, and all she wants to have y'all put in it is a card. I'll be passing around a separate plate. Ask y'all to pony up. I don't know how to start this, but check this out. So when you came here today, I flew in from Asheville. I did not bring appropriate clothes. I was just wearing like regular jeans and like clothes. Then I came to this service this morning, and I was like, okay, this is not a regular church. This is really, really nice. So I felt like, seriously, I felt like a peasant in medieval France going, okay, where do I sign? And so I wanted to tell you, this ensemble you see on me right now is courtesy of a thrift store in town called Out of the Closet. $17, including the shoes. All right. Back to business. Thank you for having me out here, and thank you for being here at all. I don't have to tell you that this issue about the relationship between LGBT people and the Christian church is essentially become cataclysmic. And it is, by its very nature, a subject which all Christians are now being very explicitly called upon to make a decision about. I am very comfortable with that imperative because I do not understand this as a theological concern. I appreciate Colleen mentioning the fact that I was always very careful, in fact, not to argue from a strictly theological point of view because this is a moral issue. So as Christians, we are, of course, called upon to be as moral as we know how to be. And I feel that this issue is of a moral imperative in the same way it was morally imperative that we stop using the Bible to justify one race of people owning another race of people. The Bible used to be used to justify slavery, and it used to be used to justify the idea that women should not be allowed to vote. Those were moral issues. This is a moral issue. And I'm glad that people are actively giving it some thought. So I just want to say I appreciate you being here. I'll tell you a little bit about my background real quick because I don't have the typical story of a Christian. Like all the Christians I know who have become, certainly the ones who seem to be famous for it now, who have become LGBT affirming Christians, their story is almost always the same. Am I yelling? Is this sound level about right? We good? Cool. Wherein they were, evangelical, conservative. They came out of that background, and they've gone through the process of changing. And a lot of those folks sort of I'm going to move around. That's cool, right? A lot of those folks have that as part of I just get more comfortable moving. A lot of those folks have that as their story. Their story is, I moved through that process. I imagine a lot of you are like, I moved through that process. That didn't happen with me. I didn't come from that background at all. When I was 38 years old, pretty late in the game, I very, very suddenly and very much out of nowhere became a Christian. It was one of these weird, instantaneous conversion experiences for which I was in no way prepared, and I had no background that would have prepared me for it. At that point, the only thing I thought about Christianity was how stupid can you get? Just unbelievable that people would take Christianity seriously. I would say definitely I had pretty much, insofar as I was interested in it at all, disdain. I thought, what a sophomoric philosophy. How what's the word, obvious can you get? Daddy up in heaven loves us best. Sex is bad. Not interested. You know what I'm talking about. So the short version, what happened to me was just about this simple, literally this simple. One day I'm at work. I'm working in a law office. I'm like law office flunky guy. I make the photocopies and set up the boardroom and do that stuff, right? Which is a pretty ridiculous job for a guy who's 38 years old. That's kind of a different subject. But basically I'm doing a job that like a well-trained monkey could do. But you know on LA Law, some of you who are old enough, remember Benny? He's pushing around that. So, but I didn't care because I was writing. And so I didn't want a job. So anyways, I was working hard on the writing I was doing. One day, I'm at work, and the reason I mentioned the office flunky thing is because I worked separate from everybody else. Lawyers don't want to see the people that make the copies. They just want to slip the stuff through the door, and my job is to pick it up and make copies. I loved it. It was a good job. Really gotten off topic here. I was at my job one day, and I felt, all of a sudden, I'm just sitting there, and I feel what feels like water coming from the inside, from the top of my head, moving down. That's the feeling I have. I'm at my desk, just hanging around. I'm like, whoa. And I start feeling this feeling. And I thought, I just got the flu. That's what I thought. You know, sometimes you're walking along the street and you're like, I just got sick. I thought that was it. A couple of minutes later, I know that's not it at all because it keeps going. And this feeling's coming down inside of me. It's coming through down, from the inside top down. I now have a bald spot where it started. So I feel like that's where it started. And I know that I need to be alone. That's what I know, I need to be alone. So I get up from my desk and I go down the hallway where in the law office they have this ancillary supply closet. It's like where we keep paper and stuff that they don't use anymore, letterhead they don't use anymore. It's just this ancillary closet. So I go in this closet and very soon thereafter I experience a phenomenon which was basically predicated upon the rather harsh awareness that I was not the person really that I thought I was, that I like to think I was. I wasn't an immoral person. I wasn't a bad person at all. I was happily married, 17 years at that point. I have a philosophy that serves me. I'm not a bad guy. But the truth is, if I think about it, if I notice it, if someone gives me the wrong amount of change, I'm not likely to keep that change. But if I don't like this business, or I don't know, if I don't like the person that's dealing with it, I might keep that dollar. I'm supposed to take a half-hour lunch, maybe an hour lunch. I might take longer. I am not a liar, but if I can move the truth a little bit so that things roll my way and nobody gets hurt, I'll do that. You know what I mean? It's these little tiny ways in which, I think of myself as somebody that likes to help people. I really don't. You know what I mean? I think I'm a good guy. If you look a little more carefully, not so much. What really struck me was the fact of the matter is, I'm never going to be better than the person I am. I'm 38 years old. I am not going to be better than I've never been able to improve myself. I will not be capable of becoming any more moral, essentially, than I am. I'm stuck with who I am. And I found that massively, that struck me as just an unbuckling of the distance between who I actually am and who I thought I was, who I like to tell myself I was profound. And I experienced this unbuckling of everything that I thought about myself, essentially. And the impact of it, all this happens at once, sort of. And the impact of realizing this is a church, so I'll be nice about it. What a loser I am. And it's not a loser, but just a dick. Just a, kind of crazy. Nothing to be proud of. I lose my knees. I've almost never, once in my life, I have fallen to my knees before. This took my knees out from underneath me. I'm on the ground. And as I'm going down, I'm like, thank God they've got this padding in this floor. Can you imagine? I'm going to crash my knees down. Like, cool, well, at least I got this rubber floor here. And then down I go. On my knees. So, in that moment, I saw my death. I'm comfortable looking at my conversion experience as some kind of a midlife crisis. That works for me. But I see my death. And I don't see like how I die. I don't go, hey, look at me, I'm going to get hit by a truck when I'm 72 or whatever. It wasn't like that. It was the direct line between where I am and the end. That's the way I'm going. I've never changed. I'll never be able to change. That brought me to tears. I'm just crying. I don't even know how to cry. I don't even know I had tear ducts before then. I don't cry. But I'm crying now, man. So I'm in the depth of this crisis, of this moment. And I hear from behind me to the left a voice that I can only describe as a cartoon voice. Earlier today, I spoke at the college, Ohio State, and they put me in the cartoon room. I talk about my conversion. I write about this conversion experience in the back of the book that Colleen mentioned, Penguins, Pain, and the Whole Shebang. And that's the word I used. It was a cartoon voice. And it said, isn't this what Jesus is for? That's what that voice said. Isn't this what Jesus is for? And I was like, done. I just became a Christian of all things to become. Me. A Christian. So, it was not a big moment in that way that conversion experiences are supposed to be big moments where suddenly the world's wisdom is known to you. It wasn't like that at all. It was just a simple statement of fact, which ran like this. God likes people. We were created. Okay, I don't really have a problem with that. God makes people. Of course, if God makes people, God is proud of people. God wants to show a lot of affection for people. I can't make a can of tomato soup without wanting to invite the neighbors over to look at it. Of course God loves us. Can't say we're not complex creations. Can't say we're not phenomenal works of art. What do we have? What's our primary characteristic? Free will. What will God not violate? Human free will. It's what makes us human. God cannot violate human free will. On the other hand, we're suffering. God is stuck. He's got oppositional logical imperatives. So he does it one time. He assumes human form. He comes down here. He does everything he can to prove he's God. Once you start raising people from the dead, you've pretty much closed the argument about whether or not you're God. One time, says what he's going to do, does it, gets out. Okay. Having me come on board with that, just as a story, was like, it didn't feel like, oh my God, I've been saved. It was more like, oh, yeah, that makes total sense. I'm in. It was like learning that, water is wet. Or, all the colors in the spectrum become black if you spin the thing. It was just a fact. So I'm done crying. I just get up, go back to my job. An interesting moment was, as I reached for the doorknob to lead out of the closet, I had 3 thoughts. The first was, I am not going to go try to make other Christians. When you're not a Christian, you hear a lot from Christians who have very much make it their business to make you a Christian. And they say they have to, that's their job. I was like, this is nonsense. That's something I'm not going to do. That is not necessary to this thing I just learned. The very fast on the heels of that was this whole concept of hell is untenable. I curse a lot in my private life, I should tell you. But I won't do it here. But you know what I'm trying to say? Untenable, nonsense, unsupportable, no. That theory, that construction is not real. The third thing I thought, and I remember this was as I was turning the doorknob, was I cannot believe that I now have to be somewhere on Sunday morning. I was like, man, oh man. So my wife was away on vacation. I'm not on vacation. She was in a business meeting in Chicago that weekend. And she was coming back Sunday night. So I was home alone. And while my wife was used to coming back after long business trips or, even 3-day business trips, while she was used to coming home and finding me in a considerable state of disrepair, you can imagine her surprise at coming home and finding me a Christian. And when I went to pick her up at the airport, I had a Bible with me because I was like, I don't know how late, I'm like, I should probably read this book. I had taken a Bible as literature class in college, but that was it. So I was like, I'll read this book because you know how you can be waiting for a long time for a plane to come in. And so when she gets off the plane, she sees me carrying a Bible, not particularly weird. I read a lot of spiritual literature, I always have. So that's not that weird for her. But she's like, what's going on? She hugs me, kisses me, and she looks at me, and she's like, what's going on? I'm like, nothing. And she goes, what's going on? I'm like, nothing. Because I don't want to tell her in the airport, by the way, I'm now a Christian. So we're driving home, and she keeps asking me, what's going on with you? And I was like, well, nothing. And she goes, okay, well, what'd you do this weekend? And I go, well, I went to the movies, and I did some laundry, and I cleaned up my office, and I became a Christian, and I made a lasagna. Like that, And she's all, wait, what? Go back. What did you just say? That's what I told her. At the time, I worked in office services that my coworker was a lesbian. We were good friends. We've been working together for about a year. Good friends. She comes back to work on Monday. She was off that Friday. She comes back to work Monday, and I told my friend, okay, you are not going to believe what happened to me on Friday. She's like, what? And I told her I became a Christian. And her first response was she was crestfallen, and she started to cry. And I was like, why? And she goes, because now you're going to hate me. I didn't even know what she was talking about. I didn't even know that not liking Christianity, not liking gay people, was a part of Christianity. I had no idea. I've had gay people in my life all my life. My father was an actor. I got gay men babysitting me when I'm a kid. I got, gay men and a lot of theater people. So I knew those guys all my life. I became an actor. I knew a lot of gay people. That was when we were living in San Diego. My best friend, we moved there from Bakersfield, California, and my best friend in Bakersfield was a gay Christian, Greek Orthodox, hardcore dude. This guy knew his stuff. My other good friend there was a philosophy professor at Cal State Bakersfield. He was gay, really gay, a gay activist in Bakersfield, California. One time he left for a week and he asked me if I would go into his house, and man, his phone was used as a suicide line for a gay youth. We're in a crisis called the gay suicide thing. That was my friend Norm. And so I spent a week answering this phone. Man, talk about a crash course in the damage being done in the lives of gay people by the church. Horrendous, right? After I had my conversion experience on a Friday, Sunday morning, got to be somewhere. So I get in my car, and I drive up Fifth Avenue in downtown San Diego, and at the first building I see with a cross, I'm like, that's definitely a church. You can't get more ignorant about Christianity than I was. This is the real truth. I knew there were Catholics, and I knew there were Protestants. That's it. I didn't know jack about denominations. Nothing. So I walk into this church. It turns out it's a Presbyterian church. And as I later learned, what my pastor used to call those guys was the frozen chosen. And for me, that's perfect, because I don't want a lot of attention. I just want to sit in the back and get a feel for what happened in my life. And I got to say, I was deeply moved by the very idea that an entire historical institution was born of just that private moment I had, right? This is a marvelous thing for me. I'm like, whoa, this whole system is basically a celebration and an exploration and an entire theology built around that one moment I had. I'm in. I'm digging it. My wife, her name's Kat, So starts coming to church with me. She's like, of course I want to spend time with you. Let's go. I don't care. She's not anti-Christian. So we start going to church together. We start going to this church. And the more Kat, my wife, Catherine, looks at the faith, the more okay she is with it. Sheer thing was this: I can't have in my life, or I'm not going to have an allegiance to anything that violates what I think of as the good. That was Kat's term. It's the good. I'm not seeing anything in the Bible that is contrary to the good. And we were both kind of surprised by that, because me more than her, I'm such a maniac and I'm so immature. I was like, oh, the Christians in the Bible, but she was like, I don't know, it seems okay. Let's look at it at least. And what she was finding was that her thing was, I don't really have a problem with this. I'm not seeing really any particular problem with this, right? So we start going to church together. It's a beautiful thing. We're both very estranged from our families, so we don't have any sense of community. We've never been part of any kind of a community at all. So it's kind of fun for us. Rewarding, it's enriching, it's nice. We go to a Bible study class once a week with all the sort of elite people in the church, the treasurer and the head honchos at the church. And we're in. I become kind of an object of interest, right? I got this conversion story. They like that story. They think it speaks to something extraordinary happened. What I don't share with them is that it's just a sign that I was so stupid and so slow that God finally had to come down and just crack me upside my head. Because clearly I'm not going to get it otherwise. In my heart, I know this doesn't make me special. It just makes me slower than all of you. 6 years go by. 6 years. We're good members of this church. We pay our money. We're good members of the church. They decide to elect us as deacons. These are Presbyterians. We're deacons. Yeah, all right, cool, sure. What's a deacon? They go, oh, it just, set up the donut table and bring communion to the people that have to stay at home because they're old. And I'm like, I can totally do both those things. Sign us up. We want to be deacons. So the lady who was in charge of deacon registration was somebody that we knew. They were in our Bible study class. 6 years. I'm friends with the pastor of our church. Friends. I see him for lunch once a month. We're friends, actual friends. Come the time to be deacons, the lady that I know goes, she goes, okay, come on, Kat and John, come down to our little private deacon office. I didn't even know there was this office down there, but this is where we do our deacon thing. And she gives us a piece of paper and goes, sign this. I'm like, all right. I'm not like any of you, I'm sure. I'd like to read it first. So I'm like, what is this? So me and Kat, we're both looking at it, and what it is an extremely poorly written document that says that people who are in same-sex relationships are not allowed to have any authority in this church. They can have no responsibilities in this church. It even stipulated not even a janitorship. They can't be janitors. They can't be deacons. They can't be, nothing. Collect the plates, bring up the communion, nothing. They cannot have any authority in this church. So I thought, this is the way my brain works. I go to the lady, wouldn't this be funny if this was like a real thing? Wouldn't it be, I thought she was, it has to be a joke. I have no other context for it. So I go, wouldn't it be funny if this was a real thing? And she goes, yeah, no, it really is. You have to sign this. So I look at Kat for a minute, and we both look down, and we had that moment, because I don't want to look at her. I'm like, okay, I'll look at it again. So I look down. Kat does the exact same thing. We both go down. And we both turned our heads and we looked at each other. By that time we've been married 17, 23 years. And we had that moment where we're like, oh, the crazy train just pulled in. You got that moment. Now we're in Crazyville. What just happened? So I go, well, seriously? And they're like, yeah. She was like, yeah. And I'm like, okay, well, can we let's think about this, right? we try to initiate a conversation in the church. My feeling was, for one, we're in a gay neighborhood. We're in the Hillcrest area of San Diego. It's one of the largest gay neighborhoods in the country. My wife and I are living in a building with 6 units. We're the only straight people in the unit. All of our friends are gay. We have a picnic thing once a week with our neighbors who love us. At that time, I had a job as the editor of a house magazine called House Magazine, like a home and garden, like decorating. Well, I got gay neighbors, and this is a big magazine in San Diego. I don't know anything about decorating. Imagine how much my gay friends had enough of a problem with the idea that I had anything to do with home decor. When my idea of curtains is like, I'll just tape a grocery bag to the window. When they found out I was a Christian, they were like, man, your life just took an interesting turn. And I'm like, okay, we're going to do this, so we do it. Our position with the church was, can we please talk about it? We need to talk about this. I was a little angry, I will say, because I felt like if we're going to be members of this church for 6 years, how come this has never come up? I read the church bulletin, I get the emails, I go to these conversations. How can this be a conviction that is so important that we're going to make people sign something saying we adhere to it? I wasn't asked to sign anything else, just that I think people in same-sex relationships, shouldn't have any authority. Wasn't asked to sign anything else. How can I be at this church for 6 years and this never comes up? But I channeled that frustration into a request. Can't we just have a conversation? I'm new to Christianity. 6 years later, I'm not that new, but okay, I'm willing to say, I didn't know. Can we please talk about this? I wanted to talk about it. And I thought it would be a good idea if we, as a congregation, we talked about it, because I'm pretty sure I'm not the only one here that feels this way. But if I am, I'd like to know, and I'd like you guys to tell me why being gay is a sin. If that's what we hold, you're experienced Christians, you tell me. Please tell me. We come to church one Sunday in the middle of this conversation, and our pastor, my friend, has written a tract which is about how people who believe that it is no sin to be gay are heretics. Heretics. Me and my wife are heretics. So we're like, come on, are you serious? We're just like, come on, man. They were happy to let us go. Go find another church. We're out. And I'm talking about we're friends, and I'd never in my life have been more diplomatic. I couldn't have been more patient with we just want to talk. You're gone. We're gone. We have to leave the church. I don't mind that as much as my wife did. She's a serious girl, so she was like, for her, it hurt very emotionally, because she understood that if you can't be at one with the Bible, if the Bible has something in it which says you have to believe that gay people are going to hell, then she can't be a Christian. And she's already been baptized at this point. And she got kicked out of the family. To her, it's like getting kicked out of the family. In her case, speaking personally about her, she got kicked out of the family again. This hurt her bad. Me, being kind of slow and stone-headed, I was like, screw them. I don't care that much. They're wrong. I'm done. They're wrong. Okay, people are wrong about stuff. She was like, no. So she did what serious people do, which is what she does when she gets serious. She got a bunch of Bible translations, and she got a bunch of articles. This was, I think, before the internet, so she just somehow collected a bunch of articles. And basically, she disappears for 2 weeks. Gone. She goes upstairs to her office. I don't see her for 2 weeks. About 2 weeks later, I'm downstairs doing what I do best, which is watch TV. And she comes down the stairs carrying all this stuff. She's a short woman. She comes down carrying all this stuff, walks down the stairs, comes to the coffee table. I'm like, okay, Oprah, you have to wait. Something's happening. I turn off the TV. She she drops all this stuff on the coffee table and she goes, "It's not in there." I'm like, "What's not in there?" I'm like, "What are you It isn't. The Bible does not say that homosexuality is a sin." I'm like, "Are you sure?" It's like, "I'm telling you." All right. So I make it my business to learn what she has made it her business to learn. And sure enough, here are the 5 reasons. There are a lot of reasons. But here's the 5 reasons that I think are most important for all Christians to take into account if they want to discern what the proper relationship is between the Bible and homosexuality. And what I find to be true is that Christians are not asked to make a choice between their compassion and the Bible. That is nonsense. That is not a true dichotomy. They are completely compatible. And when I got involved in the argument about the relationship between about the Bible and LGBT people, when I got involved in that argument, I found that the gist of the conviction that homosexuality is a sin was primarily an emotional point. It really wasn't about logic. It really wasn't about logic. The opposition to the way I thought was about emotion. And emotion is a different kind of animal to do battle with. The best tool to use in that battle is logic. People will not be logical. Anyways, I want to share with you, this is why I'm here, these 5 reasons, any one of which I believe is a strong argument against the notion that being gay is a sin. Taken all together, these 5 obliterate that toxic theology. That's my contention. Number 1, the Bible is not a Christian rule book. LGBT affirming Christians are always put on the defense with the offense of, but it's in the Bible. A Christian who believes that gay people are an abomination before God will always say, but it's in the Bible. That's their go-to argument. And it always sets the LGBT affirming Christian back on his or her heels, because it seems so absolute. I was never interested in the argument that wanted to take apart the language. I have never argued for that idea about if we take apart the Greek and we take apart the Aramaic and we take apart the ancient Hebrew, we're going to find another way, because I know how that sounds to the other side. It sounds like you're just rationalizing away something that's so clearly manifest. You're grasping at straws. I'm not interested in that conversation. Here's what I'm interested in. If you say to me, but it's in the Bible, what you are saying is that I have broken a rule of Christianity. That Christianity is a rule book for how to be a Christian. The Bible is a rule book for how to be a Christian. And if you break one of those rules, you're no longer a Christian in good standing with God. Well then, when you look at the Bible, what you know for sure is you're not looking at a contract. You're looking at a vast and complex melange of dreams and visions and commandments and parables and histories. Anything but a contract or a rule book. A contract, by its very nature, all clauses in a contract are of equal weight. You break one clause in a contract, you've broken the contract. The Bible is not like that. That is not what the Bible is. The Bible actually tells us that some things within the Bible are more important than other things. The Bible tells you that a proverb is a proverb and a commandment is a commandment. Jesus was extremely clear. The great commandment, it is everything. If you don't know anything else about what I'm doing here, says Jesus, remember this. Love God, love your neighbor. Everything else falls away before that. So the Bible says Jesus. No other law matters. No other law matters as much. The Bible is telling us that the Bible is not a contract. It's not a rule book. The whole point of a contract is that it is not open to interpretation. That's why contracts are so hard to read, because they've nailed everything. You create a contract because you want there to be no play in the way this can be understood. Clearly, the Bible is open to interpretation. Clearly, the Bible must be interpreted. Anyone who says they don't interpret the Bible is a child. Of course you interpret the Bible. Everybody interprets the Bible. If you didn't interpret the Bible, if the Bible were not clearly open for interpretation, then it would be reasonable, in fact, it would be necessary, that all Christians be as poor as a church mouse. Sell all your possessions and give to the poor. If you're looking for something with no wiggle room, that's your statement. That's Jesus talking. Jesus said, what's that saying? A rich man has the same chance of getting into heaven as a camel passing through a needle. It's easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to enter the kingdom of God. I don't see any wiggle room there. I'm telling you what, I wrote a blog post once called, if you're going to take Paul literally on homosexuality, take Jesus literally on money. Oh my God. You'd think I had said to everybody, what you should do is you should all sell your daughters for a profit. Horrendous response. People lost their minds. I'm like, see, it's about context. All the arguments that people were telling me about why that's an unrealistic thing to do were saying, well, yeah, but. They're good arguments. Yeah, but, nobody wants to hear that. And when I say good arguments, sometimes people would say, well, but if I make a lot of money, I can continue to give to the poor. If I break myself now, then I can't give to the poor later on. I'm out of money. Yeah, it's a good argument. You've just interpreted the Bible. Clearly, we allow for context, for non-literal interpretations of the Bible. To pretend that we don't is intellectually and morally dishonest. Intellectually and morally dishonest. It is our job as Christians to interpret the Bible. We must take the Bible seriously. I'm willing to. So, when you look at the Bible as a whole, you must look for its informing themes, for its primary purpose. What is it mostly trying to tell you? As Christians, we look very much at the New Testament, and we're very much about the business of trying to determine what are the most important things about the New Testament. Let's work from the top down. Look for overall principles, consistent, recurring, informing themes. And what do we see? We see love, we see charity, and we see the call. Clear, clarion, repeated call. I don't think Jesus said anything as often as he said, in essence, you never put the law ahead of compassion. He works on Sabbath and he heals the lame man at Bethesda. He violates the law, our sinless Lord. First shot out of the bank, first shot out of the gate. He violates the law. And it was a big law. And the power legal Christians, the Jews at the time, the elite of his religion, decide he needs to die for that. What he did was so bad and such an egregious violation of the law of religion that it's enough of a justification for them to go about the business now of having him executed. Let's start that process. Look what he's done. Jesus is showing us you don't take a law, a little letter of the law, and supersede God's love. You don't do that. Clearly, it's not supposed to be, I'm just going to read from this now. Clearly, it's not supposed to be about adhering to any little passage in law if doing so means behaving in ways that are in violation of God's law. Claiming the Bible condemns gay people is unbiblical and it's unchristian. Using the Bible as a justification for essentially oppressing a subpopulation, in this case LGBT people, is every bit as abominable as is using the Bible to justify slavery or to deny women the right to vote. So that's my point number one. The Bible is not a Christian rule book. Number two, homosexuality is no sin because, let me get my wording just right, is no sin because no sin is grounded in, defined by, and expressed as love. That's how you know it's not a sin. In a sin, somebody gets hurt. Homosexuality is mentioned in only 6 or 7 of the Bible's total 31,000 passages. 31,763, I think it is. 31,173. 6 or 7 times it's mentioned. 3 of those times are in the New Testament. When they are mentioned in the New Testament, the clobber passages, as they're called, you all know why they're called the clobber passages, right? Everybody knows that now? Clobber passages, familiar term, we're all comfortable with that. Phrases in the Bible that are used to clobber gay people. In the clobber passages, Paul mentions any number of sins. Drinking too much, lusting, and lying, for instance. If you've been following the debate, such as it is, between traditional Christianity and LGBT emergence, you're aware that the argument for the condemnation of LGBT people has morphed in recent times. It changes considerably. Initially, it was homosexuality doesn't actually exist. Nobody's gay. What you have are people who act aberrantly because they're tweaked in the head. They have psychological problems. All gay people are actually just straight people who need to become better Christians. Hence the huge and universal Pray Away the Gay program, Exodus International. Do y'all know what I'm talking about? That's what that was founded on, Pray Away the Gay. You don't have to be gay. You could just know Jesus better and stop being gay. I played my role in the complete devastation of the entire Pray Away the Gay movement. When Christians were no longer able to say homosexuality doesn't exist, they smoothly morphed into the new argument, which was, okay, some people are born, or some people, they didn't actually go with the born, but they were very much like, yeah, some people have a predilection, a distinct predilection for same-sex relationships. But after all, that's just a sin. Just like we're all sinners, was that argument. Just as me, a straight man, must fight the urge to lie, drink too much, be too greedy, so the person who is inclined to engage in homosexual love must resist. That boiled down to love the sinner, hate the sin. We've all heard that. The anti-gay Christian movement is nothing if not organized. So this became the message that they latched onto. They All their pastors were saying it. We've all heard it a million times. Suddenly it was the argument. My argument is that being gay is not like any other sin we can imagine or think of, for the simple reason that there is no sin I can commit which automatically removes me from the possibility of love. Murderers on death row get conjugal visits. Why does this sin have as its penalty no love for you? The Christian Nazi, no love for you. You understand what I'm saying? The anti-gay Christian line became people who are gay or who are inclined to homosexuality need to resist that urge. My argument was, let's be very clear then about what you're saying. What you are saying is that gay people need to be celibate. You're not saying that they are not gay. You've lost that argument. What you are saying is they can't live into their gayness. They can't live as gay people. What you are saying is they must be celibate. They must volunteer to live their lives without the kind of romantic, enduring, long-lasting partner love that straight people accept as their birthright and understand as one of the greatest things about being human. If you're gay, says traditional Christianity suddenly, now, you must live without that. You have no companionship. You don't get to cuddle up at night with your partner. You don't get to hold hands and watch TV. You don't get to hug your partner in public. You shouldn't do it in private. You live without love. That was the argument I put forth. My argument was, really, when love is the only thing Jesus insisted upon? Oh, nice argument. Nice argument. Matthew Vines took that argument and turned it into his video and his book. Do you know who I'm talking about, Matthew Vines? He had this huge viral, I think it's called Homosexuality and Christianity. So anyways, that argument, you do not insist that people live without love, became really a foundation, a column supporting the progressive Christian arguments against the condemnation of gay people. You don't get to tell people they're not supposed to live their lives without love. So, first argument, the Bible's not a rule book. The second argument is homosexuality cannot be put in the same category as other sins. My third point, and I'm going to read this because the language is such that it's actually kind of a complicated thought. It's true, and it's logically locked down, but it does depend on a precision of language. So let me just read this. Anti-gay Christians are being unbiblical by using the clobber passages as justification for applying absolute standards of morality to homosexual sins that they themselves are not tempted to commit, while at the same time accepting for themselves a standard of relative morality for those sins listed in the clobber passages which they are tempted to commit. You understand what I'm saying? I'm not gay. I'm not tempted by homosexual love. I don't even get it. It's not my thing. Not tempted to do it. I love to drink, so I'll try not to drink too much. That's my job. Those are different categories of sins. Christians are I'm yelling, I know. Christians are very, very comfortable talking about compromise for all the sins that they do commit. And Christians understand that these sins, these other sins that Paul mentions, must be put into a context. No Christian thinks that all drinking, most Christians do not think that all drinking as Paul stipulates. We can drink some. We allowed social drinking. It's not a huge violation. Paul tells us not to lie, and yet I can't imagine myself never saying, I can't even tell you cut your own hair. It's context. It matters. Sometimes you will lie. The way you know whether or not a sin has been committed is if there was damage done. That's how you know. You can't judge a sin unless you understand the context at which it happened, except for homosexuality. We reserve that with an absolute, but we look at even taking someone's life. There's the commandment, thou shalt not kill. But if I come to you and I tell you, Bob killed a man, you can't say if a sin occurred or not, because you don't have a context for that. You don't know why Bob killed that man. If Bob was a soldier and he was a time of war, that's no sin. Essentially, we're comfortable with that. If Bob walked up to a guy in a burger barn and plowed him in the back of the head, that's a sin. If Bob was a cop and he killed somebody who was just about to unload on a room full of people and kill them, no sin was committed. Without context, we have no definition. We don't know if a sin happened without context. Why do we feel that way about all the sins Paul talks about except for homosexuality? Logic fail. Yeah? Context matters. Grossly hypocritical to apply standards of morality to homosexual sins you're not even tempted to commit, while at the same time accepting a standard of relative morality for those you do routinely commit. To repeat myself. We must look to see if harm has been done before we dare call something a sin. My two best friends are two gay guys, Mike and Mike. They've been together for 30 years. They love each other. I don't see any sin. Okay? I'll start talking fast here because I feel like I'm dragging on a little bit. I don't know what time it is, but so I'll get through this a little bit quicker. 4, Paul was not writing about gay marriage. Paul was not writing about gay marriage. I'm going to move through this fast because I feel like we've heard this before. I feel like most of us who are LGBT affirming Christians, are comfortable, have heard this before. We've all heard it before. Paul was not talking about gay marriage. And here's how I put this argument to rest. What Paul was writing about was the coercive, excessive, and predatory same-sex sexual activity commonly and openly practiced between Roman conquerors of their region and boys of that region. The authoritative reference on classical antiquity is called the Oxford Classical Dictionary. The Oxford Classical Dictionary is the summation of all the knowledge that we have about antiquity. This is a quote from the Oxford Classical Dictionary. The sexual penetration, and they're talking about Paul's time, the sexual penetration of male prostitutes or slaves by conventionally masculine elite men who might purchase slaves expressly for that purpose was not considered morally problematic. Paul is a hero. Paul does not deserve to be maligned in the way it's become sort of popular among progressive Christians to do. Paul is a hero. That's what Paul's writing about. And listen to this. You guys are smart. So I'm going to read this from the Oxford Classical Dictionary. Check this out. It's thick, but I'm going to read it because it's so important. Listen to this now. No Greek or Latin word corresponds to the modern term homosexuality. No Greek or Latin term, no word corresponds to what we think of as homosexuality. And ancient Mediterranean society did not, in practice, treat homosexuality as a socially operating category of personal or public life. No concept of